Good news in the PulseChain universe. Yesterday was a very special day because, as you might know, Richard Hart, the founder of PulseChain and HEX and PulseX, beat the SEC. And HEX, PLSX, and PLS declared victory, but the SEC had a 60-day window to potentially appeal the case, which they did not. So that window ended yesterday, meaning we are in the clear on that end. Now we still have an Interpol case that's got to get cleared up with his lawyers, I'm sure. But it's nice to be able to put that chapter behind us. Now, the bad news is that our favorite whale dumper is dumping again. If you guys don't know, this guy's been kind of keeping the ecosystem suppressed for the last 2 weeks. And for about 2 weeks, we watched him sell billions of PLS and billions of PLSX for a total of, I think, $3 to $4 million, just cheating at the lows. Not smart, but hey, apparently this guy just gave up. And the way he sold was not very smart either, but that doesn't matter because you might learn something in this video about his strategy to potentially take advantage. Whenever you notice that big whales are capitulating like this, pay attention. Because we're going to talk about V3 liquidity and how to position yourself if you want to buy or sell strategically. You might not know. You might not understand this concept yet. Now, Mr. HEX Turbo just noticed that although this whale did take profit with most of his coins, he still has a lot of HEX left. He has 600 million HEX, and he sent 300 million to his sell wallet. We know it's a sell wallet because he's done this before. Every time this big whale moves coins to this particular wallet, he dumps them. Now, with the HEX, or with the PulseX and the PLS rather, he was dumping them very stupidly. Okay, he was bridging them out to Ethereum first, where there's lower liquidity. Then he was using MetaMask swap, which was like another 0.75% transaction fee. So tons of slippage, tons of fees. I mean, it just goes to show you, there are whales out there, guys. Especially the people with serious big money. They don't spend their whole lives on Twitter. They're not extremely online. And if these people were following any of the hundreds of influencers in the PulseChain community, they probably would have known that there are better ways to take profit. But it doesn't matter, because at least he's out at the low, at least he shot himself in the foot, ate a bunch of fees and slippage. But you, because you're watching this video, you're going to be smarter than that. Just don't use MetaMask swap in general. Guys, they add an extra hidden fee. A lot of people do it for convenience. You know, the in-browser, the in-app swap. So people will pull this up and they'll click this little swap button right here. Don't even use this button. Just go straight to the DEX website, like I'm about to show you. Just go straight and do it yourself. But now, what about this 300 million HEX? Okay, what about this? This is about half of his remaining HEX. And he's got maybe about $3 million of HEX to sell. But like we just saw with Pulse and PulseX, all that dump pressure, all that sell pressure for the last 2 weeks was surprisingly absorbed pretty well by the market. So the market knows and started to anticipate, oh, we know this guy's going to sell. We actually saw some people borrowing money from decentralized lending platforms, which I'm about to show you. That is Fiat over here. This little platform is an Aave fork. We're going to get to that. But if you start to recognize the behavior patterns of big whales, you can act accordingly if you're still bullish on the coins, which obviously I am. I'm a perma-bull on this ecosystem. So this guy moving half of his HEX to his sell wallet, well, he already dumped all his Pulse. He already dumped all his PulseX. We can be pretty sure he's going to probably dump his HEX too. But once he's out, he's out. Okay, the guy's got like $7 million total, and he's sold over half. So he's got $3 million more of HEX, and then he's done. And then he's not a bigger problem on the way up when the prices are higher. But let's say, we're pretty sure this guy's going to dump. Thank you, Mr. HEX Turbo, and everybody else. I mean, the whole community is covering this guy because one whale in this low liquidity environment can really just keep the prices low for a little bit, but not forever. And look at this guy. Tell me when he's out. Everyone's just waiting until he's out. All right. But let's say I want to buy the dip. Okay, let's say I want to create a buy wall because I think that he's going to push the price against himself because like we saw with Pulse, he didn't really sell very smartly. He sold into a low liquidity pool. And what other people were seen doing was borrowing Ethereum to then go put in a single-sided liquidity position to go buy up anytime the guy wicked the price down, making a big candlestick wick, by eating a lot of slippage. When you see those big wicks, that usually is, as long as we're talking about spot markets, that usually is just a big whale, just totally ejecting, just creating a giant candle and then getting bought back up by the rest of the retail users very, very quickly. So if you want to defend the price and potentially catch some falling knives, because you think this guy's going to sell, you can go to what's called Uniswap V3, which allows you to do single-sided liquidity. And hey, you can even use this if you want to take profit. You can create a buy wall and you can create a sell wall. A lot of people do sell walls. It's kind of a bad idea when you have a low liquidity meme coin and everybody does a sell wall. But when you've got something that's pretty liquid, the most liquid assets on PulseChain are PLSX, HEX, INC token, and PLS itself. So let's say I've got a bunch of Pulse, right? And I'm pretty sure this guy's going to dump, so I want to scoop up any wicks that he makes into the HEX Pulse liquidity pair. Now, why am I choosing the HEX Pulse pair? Well, the majority of HEX's liquidity is tied to PLS. In fact, if you want to prove why, We just go to dexscreener.com. We go to the search bar. We can search for HEX right here. Look at the most highly liquid pools, okay? Basically all the liquidity for HEX. Except for this little $126,000 of DAI stablecoin. All of the liquidity for HEX is primarily paired to Pulse. So if this guy cheats, which he's probably going to, he's going to have to sell through Pulse and ultimately get his dollars that he wants, or to get his Ethereum, right? Maybe he just wants ETH. Either way, he's going to have to go get routed through Pulse. Because look at the other side of this HEX pair, okay? It's tied to Pulse. We've got almost $3 million in these two pools right here. Now, we saw a bunch of people sell off today in anticipation, right? So the market is already anticipating that this guy is going to cheat. Look at him right here. He hasn't even sold anything yet. But because everybody knows this guy's a big dumper, a little paper hand soy boy, cheat, selling near the all-time lows, people were anticipating that he's just going to sell. So they nuked the price right back down to where before it was yesterday. It went up 20% yesterday. Now we're right back down. But remember, he's going to be selling for Pulse on the way out to Ethereum or to stablecoins. So you could go to a place like 9mm.pro, or you could go to a place like 9inch.io. Links below. These dexes are primarily useful for Uniswap v3 liquidity. It's just a little trick you can do. And I've talked about this before, but it's not that hard to understand once you get the hang of it. Most of the time, all the liquidity, all the symmetric liquidity, 90% of PulseChain's liquidity is on PulseX.com. But the other 5 or 10%, it's on these two guys over here, 9mm and 9inch. So let's say we're on 9mm. We go to the liquidity tab up here. We connect our wallet, of course, as always. And then when we want to add liquidity, click on V3 right here, V3. We want to make sure we're adding V3 liquidity. We click the add liquidity button. And remember, if I think this guy is going to create a falling knife, meaning a giant wick, right? Because if he dumps, let's just go to PulseX.com. This is app.pulsex.com. Let's see what would happen. If this guy wanted to sell, all of his HEX or giant chunks at a time. Now he'll probably do it in smaller, he'll probably go like 10 million, 20 million at a time. But if he did it all in one click, right? If he did it all in one click and he wanted to go, I don't know, take profit to ETH, first of all, he'd be very stupid to do this on the Ethereum chain because there's only like less than $1,000 of liquidity over there. It's physically not possible to get any value out of HEX if you bridge it to Ethereum first, like he did last time with the Pulse. So let's say he catches on to that. He figures that out. Maybe he's thinking about it right now. He's probably thinking about it, doing all the little calculations, going to the websites. We know he's probably not on Twitter. Right? He probably is not on YouTube or doesn't know much about the ecosystem because of the way that he was dumping in the past. But let's say he sells $1.6 million of HEX in a single click. Look, he would only get $600,000 of ETH in return. That's called slippage. There's simply not enough liquidity to absorb and give this guy money for the full dollar value of all of his HEX. So we click down here, we open up the steps in the route. Look at the routes that it takes. Look, 80%, 60 plus 20, 80% of that sell is going to get routed through Pulse, meaning it's going to push the price of Pulse down on the way into getting Ethereum. And look, he's going to eat 61% price impact. He's getting 61% less tokens than his value on paper. This is why liquidity matters. And if we wanted to make a buy wall to catch that knife, we would go over here, click on Pulse on one side, click on HEX on the other side. All right, click the fee tier. It looks like 97% of people click the 0.25% fee tier. This is just the trading fees for the liquidity pool. So what's really happening on a DEX is you've got 5 different pools. You've got a pool for every single fee. And look, some people, they're trying to max extract on the fees. They're putting their funds in a 1% pool, even a 2% pool. 2% is really high. So we typically do these for more exotic pairs, meaning if there's lower volume, you typically pick a higher fee tier to make up for the fact that less people are trading the token. And if nobody's ever created the pair yet, look right here, we've seen not created. You can create and set the price yourself for a pair that hasn't been created. And you do that over here, in this little box right here, 200 HEX per PLS. And how much is HEX today in PLS terms? Let's go find out. We go to Dex Screener, and remember, if you want the ratios, I talk about this all the time, but you make sure you go to the price chart, okay? And then you click on the, instead of USD up here, we want to see the price in PLS terms. So we know HEX is half a penny USD. But how much is that in Pulse? It's about 200 Pulse. And it looks like, is there any support or resistance? It looks like 200. This zone right here is kind of a support / resistance zone. If it falls below that, maybe it'll wick down to, I don't know, 150. So maybe I want to put a range V3 order in between 150 and 200. Now remember, if I'm on one of these platforms and it says not created yet, now you could just pick this one because everyone's already going with the 0.25% fee tier, 97% of people. But if you want to go where there is no pool yet, you can say, I want to start this pool at a price of 200 hex per pulse. Now you want to make sure you get it pretty close, right? So we've got 204 hex per pulse. Always make sure you look at the existing price, because if you don't, right, if I don't make this 204, if I make it any other number, then some arbitrage bot is going to come in and I'm going to lose a bunch of money. So for example, if I put $10,000 in, but I mess up and I put 300 hex per pulse, I'm basically selling hex at a price of 300 hex per pulse. Or let's say if I really fat fingered and did 100, right? Well, then some arb bot would come in and they would say, oh, look at this guy. He's selling his hex for dirt cheap, when really I can just dump it on the main pair for 200. So some arb bots would come, they'd buy all your hex for 100, they'd sell it for 200 over here. They'd pocket the difference. And then, you know, if you started out with $10,000, within a couple of seconds, you would be left with like $7,000 or maybe $6,000 or maybe a lot less, depending on how bad you messed up. So be very careful if you're the first one initiating the pair. I'm going to say that one more time because some of you probably aren't listening and you're probably going to do this. And in fact, most of you don't need to worry about this at all. Most of you, if you don't want to get that advanced, just chill, buy the dip DCA. But if you like learning about DeFi, this is just a quick tip. You want to start the pair at the closest to the actual price on DEX Screener pairs with real liquidity, like $2 million liquidity here. Now let's say I go over here to the 0.5% pair. Now I'm in a pool that is already created, but if I flip to the price in PLS, look right here. The current price on the 0.05% fee tier is 131 pulse per hex. So be very careful if you do this as well. Always look at the price in the particular fee tier. Because the price here is 131, if I just go ahead and add liquidity here, if I add $10,000 of liquidity into this pool, well, I'm going to shoot myself in the foot, because remember, those R bots are just going to buy up all the hex that I put in here because it's being mispriced right now. If you want to solve this, if you actually want to fix the difference, what you can do is you can just put like $1, you can put like 50 cents, okay, of hex on this side. You can enable hex, pop it up in your wallet. And I'm going to show you how this fixes the ratio really quick, because some of you might go in way too heavy and not realize this and lose a bunch of money. So really be careful. And if you're not sure, just don't do it. But I want to show you how quickly the ratio gets fixed on some of these fee tiers. Remember, 131 pulse per hex, that is a misprice right now. That is too low, okay? Too cheap. We're looking for 204. We want about 204, 205. So we enable the hex in our wallet, and then we add the liquidity. There we go, the transaction receipt. And remember, I'm only adding 50 cents right here, because I just want to wait for the R bots to fix the ratio. If I click add, and it's always good to start small if you are going to play around with liquidity. Start with 10 bucks. Don't just go all in, because I've seen people do this, and I've seen people mess this up with 6-figure bags. I really have. That was over on the base network, but it's not good, because that person didn't realize that they were adding liquidity at the wrong initial price. When, again, the majority of people are in this fee tier, and the current price on this fee tier is efficient, right? The current price here is 204 because it's an efficient market with a lot of liquidity. Over here, look, we've just added a little bit at 131. Now remember this number, and we refresh the page in about 10 seconds, and you'll probably see that an arb bot has fixed the issue. So we're going to pop over here. Look, the current price is 131 pulse per hex, but my range was 268 to 235, which is way higher than the current price. I actually set my range too high there. So let's go down and fix this ratio again. Okay, switch to the price and pulse because it's easier to understand if we flip this button here. And then let's set the range at 120 pulse per hex and the high at 487 pulse per hex. We'll just add the very tiniest little amount we can, 50 cents of hex and 3 cents of pulse. You want to make sure the actual range is within the price feed. Okay, so the 131 is within 120 and 487. So actually we're going to add this, and this is going to fix the ratio. Confirm it in my wallet. All right, transaction receipt. We'll go back to the home page. Here you can see my new one. My new active is at a minimum of 120, maximum of 487. Current price being 131. Remember, the current price should be 204. Because it can just buy it all up on this pair. It'll buy, 20 cents worth on this pair. It'll sell it on the main pair, on PulseX, and it'll equalize the difference. Let me just add like $2 more here because I think it's not profitable for the RBOT right now. So if I had like $2 more, some RBOT will probably pick it up. And remember, all this is only if you want to go with a fee tier that's different than the one that everyone else is using. So most people are using the 0.25% fee tier. But if you really want to use like 0.05, and if the price for that fee tier is not within the range on the maximum liquidity pair, put 5 or 10 bucks in there. Put 5 or 10 bucks and just wait for it to happen. Here we go. I just refreshed the page. We waited for it to equalize. Look at how it's already back up to 187. If we keep refreshing, well, just froze a little bit. Let's go back here and let's click into this fee, this liquidity position. And look, we've got 187 still underpriced. So it should be at about 204, 205. Let's refresh one more time. All right. And now we're at about 200. So you see how quickly within a couple seconds it changed from 130 to now 199. So that's just a tip that might save you from losing all your money. Just be careful, start small. And then after we equalized everything, we can go start a new position. So if we start a new position with, HEX and Pulse, for this one, I'm just going to use the main feature that everybody uses. When we look at this graph right here, it gives you a nice visual representation. So if you wanted to only buy, we'll switch this to HEX versus Pulse. If you wanted to buy within a 20% range of the current price, negative 20 on this side, 20% on this side. But now if you wanted to set a buy wall because you think this whale is going to make some dips in the chart, you could say, well, I only want to buy. I think the chart might be going maybe he'll dump it from like 190 to like 150. So I only want to buy when it goes in this range. If this guy pushes it into this range. Is that going to happen? We don't know. And if it doesn't happen, okay, whatever. Your pulse was never spent. You still have the same amount of pulse. But if you're bullish on Pulse and HEX, or if you think that someone's going to dump and then it's going to make a quick rebound, you might be able to capture that part of that quick rebound in terms of price appreciation. So for this hypothetical example, we want to make sure that the minimum price of Pulse and HEX terms is 150, and the maximum is, let's say, 190. See, and now you're only buying in that tiny range, which means you're only providing single-sided LP. So I could put, $27 in here, and that means I will be deploying my Pulse to buy up HEX when this guy pushes the price in this ratio, in this range on the ratio. And I would click add, and we would just wait. And maybe it'll get hit, maybe it won't. Maybe it'll get fully hit, maybe it'll get partially hit. Now you can do the same thing over on 9-inch. Okay, you do 9-inch, go to HEX over here, and we can pick the fee tier that we want. Now we've got nothing on here. We've got nobody selecting a fee tier yet. Let's refresh the page one more time. If you want to provide liquidity on 9-inch, go to Earn, go to Liquidity, click Add Liquidity, V3 Liquidity, and we're going to do the same example of PLS versus HEX. Okay, we do have pairs. Most people are picking the 1% fee tier. Okay, let's pick this one. Let's pick this one, and then here you can do the same type of deal. I only want to buy HEX using my Pulse when Pulse is between 150 HEX, Pulse per HEX, and 190 Pulse per HEX. And here you can see how it's single-sided. Look, if I expand the range past the current price, then it becomes double-sided, and I have to add both coins. But if I take it back over here, that HEX box goes away because I'm on the single-sided liquidity right now. I'm only on one side of the equation. Now, if you don't know the basics of liquidity providing, I have plenty of videos. Okay, this is a more advanced topic. But if you set a range like this, you'll be buying HEX when the price of HEX goes into this range in Pulse terms. If we wanted to sell HEX when it goes higher in Pulse terms, well, now we're saying when HEX is between 228 Pulse per HEX and 290 Pulse per HEX, I'll be exiting my HEX position and receiving Pulse. And if the price goes past that, I'll be fully in HEX. And so you do the same situation over here. Again, be careful if you're on a new fee tier that no one's ever done before, like no one's ever picked 0.05. If we pick this, you need to enter the initial price. So make sure you're entering the initial price at, what was it? 204 Pulse per HEX. If you don't enter that 204 correctly, well, you're basically going to be giving away your Pulse or your HEX at some extreme discount that could lose you a bunch of money. So be careful if it's your first time setting it up. And also, be careful if you're picking a fee tier that exists already, but is way out of the current price range. It seems like everything over on 9-inch is already equalized, so we don't need to do that equalization thing for the R-bots. Now here's another interesting tool you can do. Let's say I want to pair Pulse with VPulse, okay? VPulse is staked Pulse on Vouch.Run. VPulse is earning about 9 or 10% APY. Okay, it's a liquid staking derivative for PLS. I don't see a lot of people doing this yet, but what you could do is you could take Pulse and VPulse, and because you know that VPulse is always going up in Pulse terms very slowly at a rate, rate of 10% annually, we could look at VPulse over here. We can see there's pretty low liquidity right now because not a lot of people are using Vouch. And if you do use this, it's your responsibility to be careful. You are taking extra risk Don't put all your Pulse in here, because what if it goes down? All this new DeFi stuff is risky. But if we switch the price of VPulse to Pulse, go into Pulse terms, look at how, little by little, the price went from 1 Pulse per VPulse to now 1.06 Pulse per VPulse. Meaning, if you held VPulse at the very beginning, you've earned about 6%. Because VPulse represents your share in a staking pool. If you don't know about like wrapped staked ETH or liquid staking derivatives, go learn about them. Ask ChatGPT. Or don't. Remember, most of this stuff, if you want to be more passive, or if you just want to gamble, right? If you're doing meme coin gambling, you don't need to think a whole lot. A lot of you guys just want to click buy and sell. I understand. But if you want to understand liquidity, look, as long as Vouch keeps running and working okay, VPLS is going to keep going up relative to Pulse. So if you pair the two, and you pair the two on, 1%, if you're greedy, I guess everybody else is greedy here. They picked 1%. Click continue. You could buy a bunch of VPulse, and as a super advanced strategy, you could sell your VPulse from a price of, let's call it just over the current price, 1.0618, to a price of 2. All right, let's go to a price of 1.89. So over the next few years, you're basically going to be profiting off of trading fees. So you buy a bag of VPulse, the VPulse is earning you interest by going up in price automatically because it's locked in a validator. So your VPulse is earning interest while you're also selling it for Pulse and exiting slowly and earning 1% trading fees to do so. I haven't seen anybody talk about this advanced strategy yet, so you could pair any liquid staking derivative with Pulse, as long as it's a Pulse liquid staking derivative. You could do this with UPulse on PlusX.app. VPulse, I think, is the main liquid staking derivative, and UPulse probably has similar. This one's got $17,000 of liquidity on UPulse. And we could see, yeah, the scale is going up nicely here too. UPulse has been working fine for a long time. And it used to be 1-to-1. Now it's 1.09 to 1. So these are the cool things you could do. You could set a range-bound single-sided sell order over time on your liquid staking derivative tokens to earn the yield from the tokens and the yield from the trading fees on what you can pretty much expect to be a stable, reliable pair. Again, as long as you're okay with dealing with smart contract risk. Vouch.run has smart contract risk. It was audited, but what if one day audits don't always catch everything? Okay, and remember, one last time, you might like the 9-inch UI a little better. I kind of like it better. It's easier on the eyes. If you wanted to catch a falling knife from HEX, you could pick the main fee tier. We've got to refresh the page sometimes. But you could pick the main fee tier. Everyone picks 1% because they're greedy. And you can go move this down here somewhere and say, I think this guy's going to dump, so I'm going to set all my pulse. I'm going to put, a million pulse over here, 10 million pulse over here, and maybe buy the wick if it dips between 138 and 191 of a ratio. So that's single-sided buying. And guess what? You could do single-sided selling. Let's say I have a bunch of HEX and I want to sell it for Pulse one day. If I want to sell it for Pulse, but I want the price to be, 2 to 3x higher, well, my range of 384 to 460 would be saying, I want to sell, let's say my 1 million HEX, my $5,000 today, in today's value, I want to sell this when the price is 50% higher than it is today. Right now the price is 204, but I only want to start selling when the price is 384. So maybe almost double. So by that time, remember, HEX would be about $10,000. And if it keeps going higher, you'd be selling it for Pulse all the way from, $10,000 to $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 in a steady, uniform direction. Okay. This assumes that the price of HEX goes past the range that you set. And again, if you want to be on both sides, you just drag this down past the white line. The white line is the current price. The red line is the 24-hour price range, but the white line is the current price. So if you're on the left side of the white line, you'll get the Pulse side. If you're on the right side of the white line, you will get the HEX side only. I hope single-sided liquidity makes a little more sense to you. I've got previous videos. It takes a little time to digest these topics. Hope you learned something. And if Mr. HEX guy decides to nuke his bags again, like he's been doing, well, at least he's out at the lows. He's probably going to nuke himself, and I would expect, just like the Pulse and PulseX that he dumped, I would expect the market to absorb it at just a little bit lower than we are today, and then we can finally, hopefully, fingers crossed, start going up again. If you like this video, make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, share it. Helps the algorithm. If you know nothing about crypto, if you want to get a full comprehensive zero to hero, if you're a total beginner, you want the confidence to do it right, hexpassiveincome.com, link below. If you get that course, hexpassiveincome.com, if you are a beginner, you'll learn all about terminology, mindset, security, strategy, how to buy, how to sell. A lot more in depth on the basics. Okay, this was a pretty advanced subject right here. So it's always good to start with the basics. If you are brand new, it could save you tons of time, tons of money in making mistakes. It's everything I've learned over the last 10 years in terms of concepts and how to execute and just long-term strategies. So if you're interested in getting the confidence to do crypto the right way, one more time, that's hexpassiveincome.com, link below. And I'll see you on the next video.